hello, and welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining me on today. For those of you who do not know who I am, I'm Lapora Lindsay, and I go live every single Sunday. And y'all, we talk about workplace value, we talk about engagement, and we're having some really good conversations this year so far. But before we get into what our topic is today, I just have a celebration message to share. Y'all, I have been going live with you all since July of last year. And when I first started out, I was doing I had like a 5 minute intro. I don't know if y'all been with me that long, but 5 minute intro. Today it was 30 seconds. You know what? It was 30 seconds, and that's why it was 30 seconds, because I didn't do what I was supposed to do, y'all. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So let me go ahead and do that now. All right, so this is why I had 5 minutes. But, anyways, everything is all good to go now. All right, y'all. So, today, our topic is why value and loyalty don't protect you from layoffs. So, why value and loyalty don't protect you from layoffs. And when we're talking about value, we are talking about workplace value, or otherwise known as how can you be beneficial to the organization that you work for, whether it is other individuals, whether it's the team, or even contributing to the mission or the goal as a whole. So how can how can you be valuable? All right, so that's super important, right? And I think that what's the reason why I wanted to talk about this is, number one, there have been so many layoffs that have been going on as of late. Whether you personally know of someone who has faced a layoff in the past couple of years, or maybe even yourself, you have gone through a layoff. It is something that is, I feel like, by the day, by the week, by the month, it's just increasing. I myself have been a part of a recent layoff. And so I think that it is important to highlight something that we've been talking about for the past year, which is workplace value, and then talk about layoffs, because there is a connection there, but not in the way that we think, or maybe it is in the way that we think. That's what we're going to get into on today. So I don't know if you all have ever heard this statement, but it's not business, it's personal. Oh, wait a minute. The opposite one, y'all. It's not personal, it's business. So don't take this personal. It's just business, it's just professional. And I know for me that topic or that statement used to really rub me the wrong way. I'm like, of course it's personal. Like, you can't. No, this is definitely personal. I take it personal. But as time has gone on, and especially when we're talking about, layoffs and loyalty and value, I think that this statement deserves a little bit of a closer look. And that is actually how we are approaching this on today. Now, if you can stick with me into the end, this is when we're going to talk about how is this beneficial for you, and what is in it for you to see the connection between layoffs and workplace value. So I hope that you can stick with me for the next 5 to 7 minutes, y'all. That's all. I don't want to say 6, 7, because kids. Okay. So in the last couple of weeks, y'all, we've been talking about engagement. And one of the things that we've been focusing on is that when there is a mistranslation between what someone is contributing and their effort, it can result in someone being considered a low performer. And workplace value requires us to have a unified understanding. As an employee of an organization, it requires you to know how you bring value into the workplace, how you contribute in the workplace. And from an employer standpoint, it requires you to understand to understand how your employees are contributing, even if it's not in ways that are always visible or familiar to what you're used to, but just being able to understand that. And what we've been talking about before all year long is that is how you create workplace value, by having that. But I don't want to mislead you into believing that if you have workplace value and you have loyalty, you're safe from layoffs. Nor is this some type of way to invoke fear and to you either. But I really do want to approach this from a realistic lens of workplace value, but also layoffs. So I term this idea as far as organizational dependency. And when I refer to organizational dependency, this is the company's needing a particular entity or a particular role or even a particular position in order to meet their bottom line or reach whatever that goal is. So, is this position needed in order to operate at level X? Whatever level X is, you can fill that with whatever you want to fill it with. The dependency part changes depending on what level the organization is in. So let's say there's an organization that is growing, that it's thriving. At that point, what the organization is looking at as organizational dependency is what is going to help us to grow, what is going to help us to improve, how are we going to be adding to our employees, how are we going to add to what we already have. And so the positions that are organizationally dependent on meeting that goal are a lot more broad or a lot more wide, and that's fantastic. But then we get into phases as what we are seeing currently, where layoffs are happening. And it's important to note that that organizational dependency is now shifting more to something that is more foundational. And so that means that instead of the organization looking for roles and positions that are just nice to haves, it is now looking for, or nice to haves, or that adds to the culture, that, improves. They're looking for, how can we get through the week or get through the month or get through the next X amount of years. And that is a really important distinction, that it's not every position is going to be in a foundational role. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a negative thing. It's not something to cause anxiousness. It's just the way it is. And so now you may be wondering, well, okay, now that I know that not all organizations or not all roles are going to be organizationally dependent on a foundational level, what am I supposed to do with that, Lapora? How is this helpful? And I think that that is a very fair question to ask. So, what this means for you is that workplace value, when we're talking about how can you be beneficial and useful to those who you work with, it shouldn't only be viewed through a lens of what the organization gets from you. How can you benefit the organization? That is not the only lens. That is not the only angle that we are getting at when we're talking about workplace value. That's what is in it for you. It should also be viewed through the lens of, what can you gain from the work that you're doing? What can you gain from the efforts in your actions? So you can see this as a two-way street or two-way conversation, however you want to label it. It's not just about, you know, what you can do. I feel like I'm going to that quote. It's not just about what you can do for the company, but it's also about the actions and how can that benefit you in the longer term. When we go back and we think about that statement, it's not personal, it's business. The same thing applies to you and the decisions that you make in your role. It's not personal, it's business. So what are actions that are beneficial to the company? Yes, but that are also beneficial to me. I think about, I had a he's still my mentor. He's been my mentor now for a few years, and one of the things that he mentioned was he had a job a long time ago, and he didn't dislike the job. The job was okay, but there were some things he wanted career wise. And what ended up happening was he approached them with the project idea. The project idea was something that was beneficial to the organization, but it was also something that he knew that no matter what happened after that relationship potentially ended with the employer, that there would be something beneficial for him down the road. And this is why workplace value isn't just about you helping someone else, but it's also about how is that going to benefit you. And this is about the skills you build. This is about the relationships you develop. This is about the experience you accumulate. And so as we are, dealing with all the layoffs, there's nothing that can help us to plan for it, except for knowing that some positions are more organizationally dependent than others. It has nothing to do with the value that you offer. And then also keeping in mind that, hey, it's what can I do to set myself up for success even after this relationship potentially ends? Because it is a two-way investment. So sorry, y'all. So that is all that I have for today. As we are preparing to wrap up, I do have a special guest that will be joining me next week. Super excited about it. We're going to be talking about engagement once again and some other things, disorientation, how an employee or a professional, how you, regardless of where you are, honestly, how you could potentially feel lost in the organization that you're working in. So if you have questions, excited to hear your questions, comments, always. This is a conversation that I want to continue having. So if you have input, you have something you want to say, go ahead and feel free to type it in the chat. I love to hear from you, whether you're watching it live or you are catching the replay. All right, y'all. So today, just to sum everything up, we talked about layoffs. And when we talked about layoffs, we were talking about that even when you are contributing workplace value, there is still an organizational dependency factor. But all of the only thing that means for you is that when we are contributing workplace value, it's not just about what we can do for the company or organization. It's also about what is beneficial in it for us. And with that summary in mind, I want y'all to have an absolute amazing week. And please remember to stay adding value. All right, y'all. Bye. Have a good one.